Hello and welcome to the 15th podcast of Soulful Thoughts from Ireland. This week I'm coming to you from Sligo in the northwest, a mystical, wonderful place of feminine wisdom. During these summer months, every 2 weeks, I am weaving new soul stories, reflecting on the times we are currently living in and on this grand pilgrimage of life and death that we are all on. This week, visiting Queen Maeve's Cairn. As I first laid my eyes upon the Cairn of Queen Maeve, her words were instantly in my ear. Do not believe what they have written about me. Knocknarea, the hill of the moon, upon where her cairn sits proudly at the top, is clearly visible across fields and ocean, 16 miles away from where I am standing. So formidable is this hill of hers that those 16 miles melt into the landscape, giving distance no meaning. The hill is as formidable as her reputation. And yet, here was her voice, warm, embracing, and tasting like honey as it moved through the whole of my body. It felt to be an invitation to know her in a different way than how she has been portrayed, which is as a sexually wanton woman and a bloodthirsty queen warrior who will stop at nothing to win her battle. Who is this Queen Maeve, really? The next thing I heard was, "Stop calling me Queen." It seemed she wanted to get down and real as women, as sisters, and not be placed on some royal altar of long ago. It is taking me a little time to adjust to leaving off the Queen, so emblazoned in my consciousness as it is. Every time Queen slips out in addressing her, I see her raised eyebrows and a look of, "Really? Still on that old track?" When visiting sacred places, I don't go rushing headlong in. I start slowly, opening up the communication well before, so that when the visit does happen, there is a greater intimacy and communion, rather than a tourist photo op. I began first with Maeve from afar, then gradually ventured to the base of the hill of the moon. On the western side, I was told there was a fairy glen. This felt like a good introduction to come into physical proximity with Maeve. I did not really know where I was going, but I knew the general vicinity. And unfortunately, tourism has located all of the accessible sites, so I guessed I would find it. Coming up the hill a little way, I saw 2 parked cars. Good indication, I thought. I scouted around, but did not see anything promising. Then I heard some excited fairies with laughter, or at least fairies in children's bodies, that is. And up over the rise came a group of joyful children and a couple of joyful adults. They were all glowing and light-hearted. I asked the mum if she knew where the fairy glen was. She said, "Oh yes, we have just come from there." And she continued, "Now, you walk down the hill a little way. Then on the right, you will come to a well with a rock wall enclosure. Look directly across the road to your left, and you will see a small hole in the hedge. Go through that hole, and you are on your way." I almost started laughing. It felt like such a C.S. Lewis moment. I had this image of getting sucked in or pulled through that alluring opening in the hedge. So off I went. And there, almost at the bottom of the hill, was the most beautiful well. I made my offering of wild flowers, blessed myself with the water, and turned to the opposite side of the road. There was the hole in the hedge. I ducked in, and indeed, I can understand them naming it the Fairy Glen. Firstly, because it does feel like straight out of a fantasy scene. The huge trees, the greenery dripping and cascading down exposed precipices. It was another world in there. I made my offerings to the fairies, and soon thereafter began to feel them with me as I was walking. They were curious, and I also discovered they were here to serve Maeve. As they said, who would not serve her? I felt their reverence for her and their deep call of duty to this place, to this woman who has extended through time and is firmly rooted in this area. It felt the good and right place to begin here. I stayed quite a while, soaking up the magic of this glen, and eventually ducked back out of the hole, through the hedge, retrieved another blessing from the well, and climbed back up the hill. I knew I was very close to the place where you began your ascent up to Maeve's Cairn, and even though I knew I would not be walking up this day, I felt the call just to go and pay my respects closer by. It was a beautiful, clear day, and I was a little horrified when I arrived at the parking area. It was filled to the brim, and there were families rousing stubborn children and rebel cousins, walking groups chatting loudly, and runners stretching their hamstrings, preparing for their lycra-covered bodies' exercise. What of the holy pilgrimage? I wandered a little way up the path and leaned in under the oak trees, simply breathing into my presence, their presence, and the presence of the hill itself. I would climb another day. And that other day was the feast day of Mary Magdalene. How apt. 2 strong women living as leaders in a man's world. 2 strong women who through their wisdom maintained their leadership. 2 women who honored their own bodies through the sacredness of their sexual and sensual nature. 2 women who lived for equality of all souls, seeking the good and harmony in humanity. 2 women who have been wrongfully recorded in history and their name and reputation smeared throughout time. Yes, this was the day to ascend the hill of the moon, not only for myself, but for all. It was later in the day. The parking area was quiet. There was a soft rain. This is a misty rain that falls so gently and does not leave one feeling wet, but rather comforted by its touch. I met 3 or 4 people coming down the hill. Otherwise, I ascended alone. It is a steep ascent. I kept feeling to stop and turn around, to take in the magnificent view of mountains, lakes, and estuaries that were able to peer through the rain. But I was pointed not only to the geographical surroundings, but also to see how far I had come. That is, how far I had come on my journey in this life, and the need to celebrate this. I was being asked to come into a deep sense of pride of my accomplishments, something I do not readily do. As a Capricorn, I am always climbing higher and higher and never take time to stop and actually acknowledge how far I have come or what I have achieved. I only seem to do that for my failures. I could feel the beginning now of an opening within me for the other, to fully acknowledge and accept my accomplishments, both in the interior and exterior world. As I reached the summit, I felt into the silence of being the only one here. I immersed myself in the stillness, and I could feel the breath of Maeve. I began to walk around the Cairn, chanting a Magdalene chant and carrying my heart rock that I had brought as an offering for the Cairn. Completing the circle, I came to the east side and began to pray to both Maeve and Magdalene. And as I did, a great wind rose, and I could feel the strength of them both swirling around and within me. We, 3 sisters here together, with my prayer joining us in the timelessness of the Spirit. And then the wind dropped. The rain and mist parted, revealing the sun. And a different beauty arose, with the greater views now appearing. Mountain contours defined, with creases and rivulets, the ocean curling its blue and white waves gently. Loch Gill, the lake of brightness, the lake of lovers. I could feel its gentle power and calling. I placed my heart rock on the Cairn. I breathed in unison with the hill, with Maeve, with Magdalene. After some time, I began the descent. As we approach Lunasa, the Celtic festival of the harvest, I wonder how many of us truly do harvest our lives. During these times, we are being given ample time to reflect on our lives. This in itself is a part of the harvest process, as we cannot harvest what we do not acknowledge. Acknowledging our own faults and failures and times we messed up is often paramount. But what of the other? Our goodness, our accomplishments, and times we did well. I have spent much time deflecting the latter and languishing in the former. But what is needed is an honest appraisal of both. This seems to me as what brings forward balance, harmony, and growth in our soul and lives. Is this what Maeve and Magdalene did? Something tells me yes. Any good leader and any person grounded in their own being must. For if we only see our faults and failures, we will never rise. And if we only see our accomplishments, we will surely fall. Sometimes it feels like an intrepid, tight wire walk through life. But that is why we have the balancing bar. What is your balancing bar? What allows you to walk in the knowledge of the fullness of your being? That is all of who you are. It seems to me that that balancing bar is love. That which brings warmth of heart, acceptance, and strength. May it be so for us all in these days. I wish you a blessed harvest time, a blessed ascent and descent as needed, and may the hill of the moon bless you as the full moon comes upon us. Shlan.